Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will have this recorded, so it'll be available. I'm Carla Howell. I'm the content expert for research and grant writing for the system. I'm also the Director of Purchasing and Sponsor Programs Administration at Nicholls State University. I will be tag teaming today with my co-presenter, Debbie Benoit, who's the Director of the Office of Research and Sponsor Programs at Nicholls State University. I get that right, Debbie?
That's right. And I just wear one hat.
Yeah, well, foolish me decided I want to try to wear two. I'm gonna have to have it in a head, I think. We're looking, this is our first in the series for the Bridging the Divide summer series for the grant writing initiative workshops. This is available in Moodle. It's our course in Moodle. You'll find some more information in there. Okay, so there may be some problems with others joining. Caitlin, I guess you're monitoring to see if anyone else comes in at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And we're calling this one Basic Grant Writing 101. This is for the new person to it. Some of the seasoned ones may want to be in to listen. We've got that. I'm getting some messages coming in to me. We will, if I can get my mouse to move around. We're looking at the grant writing process. Grant writing can cover a broad scope of activities from the planning, the research, and to actually developing the proposal. I've been told, and I've seen this in several places, that 80% of grant writing is the planning, and actually only 20% of it is actual the proposal writing. So when I get those folks that come to me and say, "Oh, I can't write a proposal," oh, you can. It's the planning, the putting the steps together and going from there. We often say, you can't predict the future. Prediction's difficult, and according to Yogi Berra, but it's especially about the future. But we can reach out there, reach for funding to help us with the future endeavors. Debbie?
Yes. Thank you, Carla. Keep in mind that there are some basic elements that we need to look at in preparing to write a grant. The need, not the want, should be focused on. That should actually be the theme throughout your writing. But let's be clear, it's not need because we have nothing or need your money to help us out of a dire situation. Rather, it's need justified with data and supported by your mission. So this need can help move the needle towards an established strategic plan that your university has or your department. Next, gathering the information. That is so important. Before searching for a grant, you must create some sort of a toolbox of data. Could include things like the university mission and vision, your department's mission and goals, university statistics like number of majors in your discipline, also things that become more assurances like your W-9, your indirect costs data, and there are different types of elements depending that are necessary as attachments depending on what type of funder you're dealing with. Next, look for funders that support your need. Funders too have their own mission and goals, and their awards are directly tied to them. So find out what they are. They're usually stated in the RFP, that's the request for proposal, or search past awards to discover the types of projects that they're accustomed to funding. Remember, don't waste your time by submitting projects to funders that don't provide funding for your scope of work. Next, review the grant requirements in detail. This can be the death knell of your project. Everything you need to know is in the RFP Bible. As an example, the first grant that I ever wrote 35 years ago, I saw or noticed the scoring rubric and assumed that that was only for the reviewers. That's not the case. I soon learned how wrong I was. So do pay attention to everything in the requirements. Next, plan your completion strategy. Time management in grant writing is essential. Remember, life happens and you have to initially plan your proposal writing accordingly. Number 6, establish your budget request before writing. This is my approach, and I tend to like this because to me, it's important to know what is allowable, which also is found in the RFP, but also to be able to get quotes on budget items that you need in order to be successful with your project. If your budget item cost $10,000 and you find out in the RFP that they won't fund equipment over 6,000, then this proposal is not for you. So that's why it's important to know this information in advance. Next, remember to answer the questions that the funder is asking. Again, they have their own mission and vision. The questions they ask need to be answered directly to provide the information that they need to know. So don't try to reframe their questions to suit your points that you want to make. And last but not least, recognize the importance of relationships. We have all heard the term, it takes a village, and it's so true in grant writing. Relationships with the program manager, relationships with the research office, and also with grant collaborators, those that will eventually offer letters of support. All of these are needed. So do this at the beginning of your grant writing, and ideally the latter two relationships should be established way before you seek a funder. Next, again, the idea that exists is so important, but the idea has to equal need. So your task is to present the idea clearly and concisely in a fundable proposal that appeals to the funding source. But be comfortable and certain that your plan is written in a fashion that emits a clear understanding. A program manager once said to me, you have to write it in such a way that if I closed my eyes, I could visibly picture the plan, process, and implementation. Remember that the subject matter experts that will be reviewing your proposal can easily shoot holes in your plan if you're vague. Know how you're going to measure your success as well. Learn how your grantor measures success. And if you can measure it in the same way, that's the perfect marriage. Also, I know that we quite frequently get our funders or our PIs in our office asking where is the money available. And I'm sure many of the universities like us have all of that information available on our website. Your research office is a plethora of information for this. And there are elements that you can go to find the right funding source. For instance, our system office provides SPIN and InfoEd, which is a pre-award searchable web database system that includes database of funding opportunities, a database for investigators' profiles that actually match and alert them of funding that is appropriate for their discipline. Funding opportunities here are geared towards your research and programmatic needs and interests, and it's delivered automatically to your email. Also, grants.gov also lists many discretionary funding opportunities from about approximately 26 agencies throughout the US government. There's also NIH and NSF, if those are appropriate to your funding interests. And then there's also the search for a foundation center, which helps with finding and seeking foundation grants. Also, there is the Federal Register. A lot of people use this to search different funding opportunities for them. And what you can do with the funds in your for your grant is always dependent on the funding source that you select. All have different requirements and therefore disallow different items. This is why you have to read the RFP requirements carefully. And finally, again, I have to plug in your sponsored program office because it's an excellent resource to help guide you.
So with that, as you know, anything that can go wrong is going to go wrong. So reiterating what Debbie just spoke, know your resources. Your sponsored programs office or your grants office is going to be your guru. All the proposals generally go through those offices for an internal routing process. They may vary from institution to institution, but we generally have to, go through that process, and they know all of this information that Debbie has provided to you. The info ed spin, they have links, should have links to that on their site, grants.gov. Just be sure when you first hear of any funding that's available, reach out to them, let them know you're looking at that funding. They may have funded proposals in that area that they can provide to you to use as a source to get your proposal started. Find successful grant writers within your discipline, your department, your college, your organization, or your colleagues at other institutions. Most have tremendous amounts of knowledge, in what they have funded. They'll have databases listing that, and those can be your best resources. Use your peer reviewers to review your proposals, sometimes within your discipline, sometimes outside your discipline, because you want to make sure that proposal is written in a way that anyone can understand it from the basic. Don't expect that all reviewers are experts in your area. And like I said, look at previously funded projects for a sense of what's typically awarded in your area. Most all your federal agencies are going to have a list of what's previously been funded. Go through those. Generally, they'll have an abstract. Some of those will have those proposals available. Once again, I'm going to go back, check with your sponsored programs offices. I'm building, trying to get a large database of all the funded proposals that we can get. We reach out, we get a lot through the Grants Resource Center. We share them amongst institutions. My plan is hopefully in the Moodle site, the learning management system where we have this course set, we're going to be able to put those in there at some point. We're going to have a listing of and a link to previously funded proposals that can be used as a resource.
So getting started is something that especially new faculty members, once they come to campus that have never written a grant before, they always probe of how do they do it? Where do they go? What do they do? So we all have institutional and internal grants, and we always, I think, advise them to start off small to actually help build their confidence. Because if you can become successful with a small grant being awarded, then you feel a little bit braver to put your toes into the bigger waters of grants. The internal grants typically here are more or less like a form. You just answer some questions on a form and describe what your plans are to as far as your research or your program. And so they're fairly simple to engage in. As you get a little bit more into the external funding, like small projects through foundation or industry, again, you can get some more form type applications, but it generally expands into a little bit more narrative, and so it sort of gives you a little bit more work in order to secure those grants. But you're still in a smaller, especially if you're local and just using Louisiana type foundations and industry, your pool of competition is a little bit narrower than it would be if you're going on a national level. So the state versus federal, again, in the state competition, like Board of Regents grants, you are definitely more of a smaller pool of candidates when you're not going for like the NSF and the NIH grants. So we always encourage building upon those. And then when you get the confidence, then you go into the federal grants, and you tend to be more successful when you get there. Next, there are more questions that you need to ask. And again, I'm going to go back to the RFP because this is where you find everything that you need to know. If you have anything that is needed, like if your project is going to be funded, or what population they fund, or the different agencies that require matching, all of that information is there in the RFP. What I like to suggest is when you read the RFP is to highlight it. And then I would actually go through and create a separate bullet sheet of all the requirements in the RFP. I think that is usually RFPs are anywhere from 20 to 50 pages full of text, and you can kind of get lost in all of the elements of the requirements. But if you develop your own bullet sheet of 2 or 3 pages, it's a good reference for you as you continue to develop your grant.
You want to do the process, Debbie? You want me to go through?
Oh, I thought you had that one. That was number 12.
Okay, well, I can. You know, we always say it must start with a good idea. You need and you got to take that idea and you got to show it. It needs to be a good institutional fit. What is the need at your institution? Simple winning team. I mean, you've got key players right there within your department, within your institution. Think about who are the players that can bring the most to the table with you, and put a team together to help you. When you have to put your faculty expertise in part of your proposal, that helps. They said, you know, this person has been successful. They can make this happen. Match the idea to the sponsor. Back like Debbie said, read that RFP, read and highlight the guidelines. We can't say that enough, because you are going to need to go back to the RFP continuously throughout the entire process. Make your sheet of bullet requirements. Contact your grants office. That's another thing I can't reiterate enough. You know, let us know, let us help you. That's what we're here for. We're a service office and we are to help you through that process. Plan in detail. As Debbie mentioned, we mentioned earlier, develop your budget from your plan. Create your template and have your narrative in mind. I like to see starting with an outline and answering the questions, you know, that were on the previous one. Know the scoring rubric. Look at how they're judged. The Board of Regents, for example, at the back of it, they have their rating sheets. They tell you how many points each section is worth. That's important. If it's a 20-point section, be sure that you put enough information in there to get the 20 points. Be persistent. Revise and resubmit. Revise and resubmit. We can't say that enough. When should you read the RFP and the guidelines of the solicit? When you first know about it. You read it right then. Read through it. Read it again in more detail. Before you submit a letter of intent or a pre-proposal, make sure that you meet all the eligibility requirements. Your sponsored programs office, again, they can help you with that. After your pre-proposal is accepted, if you've done a letter of intent and they come back and say, yes, you're invited to apply, read the RFP again. You're writing your proposal or you're putting together the sections of your proposal, go through it again. And 5 days before the submission day, because I can promise you, every time you read it, you're going to catch something that you didn't catch before. So what's your next step after reading these guidelines? Well, that we're starting to climb. Call your program officer. Brian at the Board of Regents, he's there, he's available. They do have a deadline, a cutoff date for when you can call him. I believe, is it still October 1st on the enhancement program, Debbie? Do you know? I know that used to be it, and it's generally pretty set, but it's going to be in the RFP. They're going to have the exact deadline in there.
Right.
That's a major variable in getting your proposals funded. Contact them. And when you get your idea, you can contact that program officer I always ask, do it in writing, put your idea in writing, copy me on the email, or send it to me and we'll contact the program officer for you and make sure that it does fit the plan that they're looking to fund.
So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's the same way you approach your grant writing. It looks like an impossible task sometimes when you, after reading the RFP and then trying to break it down into manageable pieces. But it is important that you work at a time management type schedule where you can develop a plan and execute it in a manner where you, as I said, life happens, where you allow enough time to complete it before the actual due date. Remember when you're writing always to that there's going to be a panel, subject expert, someone at the other end that's reviewing, and they typically review a lot of grants. And so they can get lost in the minutia and the text and forgetting, you know, which grant they were that had one element in it as they read the next. And so they have to pour through it many times in order to really understand your project. So it's important that you write it in a fashion that makes it easier for them to remember and look at. It's, again, all text is something that they get sort of lost in. And so you need to break up your proposal with charts and graphs and other ways to deliver your information so that it looks more interesting. I like to give back the language of the funder as much as possible. If you look at the elements of the different sections that you have and the scoring of those, then you know which area you need to pack more information in. And if you once you develop, I would say, like a template of those different sections that you need to address, and then start writing under those sections so that when the reviewer is looking at his score sheet and matching the sections for what you're saying, then they can easily go to that page or that area within the narrative and be able to find what they're looking for. And okay, so who signs this proposal? Again, it's in our case, it's the research office. I'm the signatory authority for Nichols. And so all grants have to come through this office, and it has to route through other offices. That's why, again, the timeline is so important. You have to be prepared to have your grant route through the proper channels internally before it's actually submitted to the funder. And sometimes that takes a while. A lot of the people that have to sign off on internally have other hats that they're wearing. And so, or they may not be here that day, and your proposal might have to sit on their desk a day or so before it moves forward. So it's important to get it done ahead of time so that all of those things can flow and you can get your proposal submitted before the deadline.
Yeah, and again, here at Northwestern, same thing. Our internal routing goes through here. All technical persons have to go through our IT area for them to approve. Your dean, your VP, especially when there's matching involved, we've got to have confirmation on that match, and it's got to go through there because the administration wants to know what we're putting out there, what we're promising on behalf of the university. So that is very important to know. If you find funding at a warehouser and they just have the application and you think, please don't just sign it and send it out. Check with your sponsor programs office. Make sure that we're involved in that.
I think another element to remember too is that we encounter that sometimes on our campus is PIs that write grants think that the grants are being funded directly to them, but it's not. Anything that that they write is being funded to the university. And so that we are ultimately responsible and accountable for the money that's being awarded. And it is awarded to the university in the university's name. The PI is the one who actually implements the project, but it is ultimately the university's responsibility. And so that's who the grant is really funded to.
And therefore must follow all state purchasing and procurement, restrictions and guidelines. Once it comes into the university, is considered state funding,
Right.
Or has to follow all the restrictions of state funding. So be sure to check on that and don't just submit something on your own. So according to Mark Twain, courage is resistance to fear, the mastery of fear, not the absence of fear. So why do you avoid writing grants? We hear all of this and don't have the time, don't have this, but it's the fear of rejection. And in reality, only one proposal in 5 is turned down because the idea wasn't good enough. So if you've got, take your idea, make it match. No one's going to tell you you don't have a good idea. Be creative, find the need. Another reality is a rejected proposal is worth about $10,000 of free advice. The feedback that you get when your proposal is not funded is invaluable. I mean, you take that. The success rate is higher for a proposal turned in a second time, naturally, because you take that feedback, you make it better. And the success rates for the third submission is almost 1-to-1. So that's just about a guarantee. You will see some that are funded on the first round. It happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but I can tell you it's always stronger on that second and third submission. So everyone says, oh, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. It's like an Olympic event. It requires constant practice and staring early. How about starting early? How about I left the T on there? Debbie, you missed that on me. And starting early.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I will tell you, I want to go back to what you said about the reworking your proposal. I tell faculty it's never a waste of time to write a proposal. If you don't get funded, it's something that can be reworked, retooled, and resubmitted either to that agency or probably another agency as well.
Exactly.
And most recently, this year, we had a faculty member in chemistry that got his Board of Regents finally funded to the tune of almost $200,000, and it was his 7th submission. I mean, I don't say that to discourage anybody. I say that to note that it is always important to rework and resubmit, because if it's not the first time, it may be the second, the third, and maybe even the 7th. So
you've done the groundwork. I mean, you've
right.
got the backbone created. Now you're just taking the advice from the reviewers and implementing it.
Exactly. So the keys to success are innovation and creativity. Yeah, they're always looking for the innovative piece of some particular problem, that solution that maybe has never been tried. And so that's really important. And again, we're trying to match whatever the funder's mission is with the mission of the PI that wants the dollars for his particular project. So being creative in that way is so important. And I'll go back to the relationship issue. Relationship with the program officer is important. Don't feel like you're being a pest if you call them. most everything is in the RFP, but there are some things often that they forget to make clear or note. And having that relationship with the program officer, that he knows your name, he knows your institution, he knows your project of what you're wanting to do. He can advise you whether or not it's something that is typically funded by their organization. And remember that some of these people have worked for other agencies as well. And so if it's not something that they typically fund, maybe they can lead you to an organization that would be interested in funding your project.
Exactly. And Karen, we I could have clarified this. The program officer is the person at the agency, at the place that you're asking money for. They oversee that program at the Department of Education, at the National Science Foundation. Usually within each agency, they'll have several departments that fund in different areas or different type of disciplines or different type of projects. Some will be research, some will be activities, what have you. But the program officer is going to be the person, your contact at the agency that is sharing the funding. Let's see. I don't know if I can unmute you. Caitlin, are you able to unmute Karen? We will have some questions and answers in a few minutes, and we can unmute at that point if you want to hang on just a second. But your sponsored programs office at Northwestern is going to be the office of sponsored programs. We're now in business affairs. That would be me, Carla Howe, and Alicia Jones is the associate director. But each institution will have it's a grants office, which may have a little variation in the name. So I'm going to address a few proposal maxims here that I came across, and I thought these, just worth mentioning. Chances are your proposal won't be funded the first time. That's just a given. It does happen, but that's why we say redo. It most definitely won't be funded if it's not submitted. So you've got to write it and submit it out there. The reviewer's main job, he's looking for ways to eliminate your proposal. He's trying to say you didn't follow this guideline, you didn't answer this question, you didn't tell us how you were going to measure the success. That you got to answer the question so that they cannot use one of those to eliminate you. Best proposals get the reviewer's attention in the first few pages. Abstracts can be the hook. Give a good idea of what it is you're looking to do, and stress the need for it. A proposal that's been thrown together in a few days looks like it's been thrown together in a few days. I'm sure all of the institutions we have someone that shows up today with a proposal that's due tomorrow. We do the best we can to try to get it into shape, make sure that we've met all the requirements, but it's hard to get one funded on that. You can't have too much preliminary data. Let them know your need. We're poor, we're in a rural area, our budget's been cut, and give them the details, give them the numbers that support why you're needing this. We have 87 students, scheduled to graduate in this discipline next fall. There's no substitute for a good idea. A good idea is a good idea. And choose the most effective collaborators. Once again, your team players. Find those people who are successful in your area, who are experts in your area.
I love this one. The crisis on your part does not constitute a crisis on my part. We say that a lot around here because, as I said, when we have to route it internally, it has to go through about 5 or 6 offices for signatures. And we in sponsored programs are typically the cheerleader and the one that, is always calling these offices to say, we got to move it forward. We got to, we have a deadline. And of course, they're always saying, well, why didn't they turn it in earlier? Because I was out sick, or I have this big project that I'm working on in my unit that, is taking most of my time and I don't have time to look at the grant. So yeah, definitely get it into your sponsored program office as soon as possible and work with them from the very beginning they will be, again, your biggest support and help make sure that you get the grant to the funder in time. And as Carla said, the biggest mistake is not to write the proposal at all. That's a way to guarantee that you don't get the funding. So it's important to get your feet wet, to try it out. Again, I know it can be a daunting task, and especially for faculty that are teaching 5 classes, it's almost impossible to have the time to devote to grant writing, especially if you're not familiar with it. But that's what the sponsor program office is here for, to help field your way through whatever you have to do. So just try it. And again, it's never in vain, because if you're not funded, you can rework it and resubmit it the next year.
We can't reiterate that enough. I mean, get in touch with us. Like I said, we've started sharing proposals amongst the institutions. At Northwestern, we may have not had that funded, but UNO may have, and we've reached out and we share information. We have a cohort that I've kind of put back together. We had it years ago, of the directors of the research and sponsor programs offices at the universities, and we share data all the time, share information, share our stumbles, share our anything that we're struggling with, and we like to share our successes too. So if I have a proposal here that's been successful in an area that Debbie has someone at Nichols is looking into, I'm going to share that funded proposal with her. We're all on the same team, and you never know when you reach out like that, when collaborations may form. 2, 3, 4 of our institutions together is much stronger than just one of us going after a huge pot of money. So definitely reach out to us. I mean, that's why we're here. That's what we're supposed to be the experts in, and we want to do all that we can to help you and to get successful, to get you started. Well, I didn't mean to change screens. So I'm going to have to forgive me. I was trying to turn my video back on, but here I am. So is there any questions that we can address at this point? I've tried to handle a few in the chat as we went along. I've got my information, Debbie's information here. If you're not sure about who your contact is at your university, reach out to me. I can definitely let you know. I know if we have any new faculty that are watching this or on here, all the university structures can be different. We've recently moved our sponsor programs office, the pre-award office, into the business office here. So we're working closely with the post-award, but a lot of that has to do with budget cuts, but a lot of it, is just for the functionality. Your larger research institutions, ULL, Tech, y'all are going to be, have a little bit of a different structure also. But all of us have our ways. We have our procedures in process, so constantly changing. We do work together to try to be the best support that we can be for our faculty. Thank you for joining us. All this is in the Moodle. There is going to be a link in the Moodle with a general questionnaire that in the very first page when you sign into it, just kind of a get to know. We want to know where you're coming from, what you're looking for. And the main thing is reach out, share your questions, share your concerns, share your successes with us. Debbie, thank you so much. You want to add some closing words here today?
Well, just there's, I think, so much more to be covered. It's, it's, I think, particular to whatever the project or the research is about. We can be more specific if we have a certain issue that we know that they want funded. We can point them to the right funders. We can just be a lot more helpful if we know exactly what they want funded. So
we will be having some more success sessions starting next week. Debbie's going to be presenting with me again on a budget preparation, right, Debbie? That's the one you're in a couple of weeks, and we've got, next week we're going to be meeting with some funders who've been rejected and sharing their thoughts on how to be successful the second and third time around. So our sessions will be available. Caitlin has put a link for us in here if you don't mind giving us a little feedback on today's session and your thoughts. And I think we asked in there also, what else would you like to see? We do have 5 sessions scheduled in the workshop for the grant writing. And I hope to see you again. And thanks, Debbie. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Carla.
Is there no one has any questions? I haven't seen any other. No, we don't have any other questions in there. So thank you all. Look forward to seeing you later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.